Hello friends, and here is the karma reading. I'm still testing. I still don't know if I'm going to keep this reading, so if you like it you have to say something, or I will save myself about 30 hours of work and kind of like just continue with my other monthlies. I really think like we are getting through quite a bit. I have modified the spread a little bit this time in order to be a little bit more efficient. So let's start with just like telling you that there are still some specials going on. If you guys want your reading, like you're going to get it sort of like one level up. So instead of like regular 2 to 3 weeks wait, I am kind of like dishing it out in a week, and if for some reason I'm a little bit late, you get a little bit more time added to it. And if you really want a rush, which before it was 7 days, now you get it in 3 days, and urgent was 3 days before, now pretty much you're getting within 24 hours. Then if you're in North America, you're getting, if it's done between 2 p.m. then you're getting it the same day. Also guys, the X spread is on kind of like looks like permanent special, and one special that many of you already asked me about is really coming up, and is going to be 2019 annual scope. And for those of you who enjoy 2018 scope, please come on my website cattarot.ca and put yourself on a mailing list, because I'm going to be letting you know this pre-order price of $19.99 per sign or $39.99 for all signs is basically going to last only maybe 3 weeks, and is going to probably be enclosed in the monthly reading, which is kind of like coming in about a few days. And take advantage of it, because otherwise it's kind of like jumping up to $29.99 and $59.99. Okay, so let's go to where we have to be. You see, I was not that long. I'm reading this with Kipper, and I'm reading this with Cosmic Tarot. This is kind of like giving me a good combination. And I actually told you that I have sort of like simplified this, because I find this, I mean, you knew that the spread was like just like I'm in work in progress. So now I want to see what is dark, what is light in the situation. These are significators. They are the same in every reading, and they are simply just like sort of like the areas that I really want to explore. The reasons behind the situation, the guidance, and what are the karmic basically lessons that we actually need to learn in all of that. So let's start, guys. Hello Virgo, and welcome to your October, early November Twin Flames reading. So just as I said to all the other signs, just because it's a general reading, make sure you're checking your ascendant and you're checking your moon sign. If you're really ambitious, check your Venus sign. And also, in addition to that, if you're watching for somebody else, also check their Mars sign, because the messages sometimes hit you not necessarily on your sun sign as a general message. And of course, you can check me at cattarot.ca and see the various readings I'm providing. So let's start with this. Like, this is really talking about something that is looming, maybe something from the past, maybe something that really needs, it's kind of like bringing this to your kind of like your attention, something you need to know. It's kind of like really interesting that you're getting High Priestess, Alpha and Omega, as you can see this, right? And also we see here that like also she's marked with tides over here, and also almost like the stars over here. And she usually is always represented with a crescent moon, right? So yin and yang symbol, lots of symbolism over here, union and dualism, right? And this is kind of like the first and the last letter of Greek, basically alphabet, right? So meanings like almost like Amazon, A to Z, like from the beginning to the really end, right? So this is kind of like the precursor to the Empress card. And like, I mean, even though she kind of like has a womb and potential to nourish a living being, sort of like she's still staying, let's call it, unfertilized. And I know this sounds like really, hello cat, is this biology lesson, right? This is like simply about observation card. It is like something that really probably a situation is like still brewing or need to kind of like look into, because there's like still no fruition out of this kind of like like situation, right? Because when we kind of like see yin and yang symbol, it's talking about that fundamental truth of nature, the way we perceive it as humans, right? Of course, animals are not seeing this the same way. My cats just like really want to be served and petted, and of course in the next life I really want to be a cat, and Siamese cat, and belong to somebody really, really rich. So just like small 3 wishes kind of a thing. So this is like talking about somebody who really attracts all people, men and women, right? But she seems to be, or he, unassuming and maybe a bit reserved. There's like also somebody who can be a bookworm, and kind of like still waters run deep. Maybe there was a situation where there was like not much said, but it was like certain things that were really just like penetrating. Maybe it was kind of like that piercing aspect, right? And there is like some element of certainty, and there are like also psychic powers hidden in this card, right? And this could be sort of like some kind of like taboos that are also explained in this card. I don't know, like it's almost like virginal kind of like energy over here. There's like a wisdom, there's like common sense. And since this is like in the moon category, this really needs to be activated. There is like this like quiet assertiveness, and I don't know, like was this a platonic relationship? Because it doesn't look like we're looking at family room. Whenever I see this card, like, I mean, what do I see? I see coziness, like somebody's like kind of like serving a tea. And who do we invite into our home? People who are really close to us. Maybe there was like sort of like hesitation of bringing somebody in, being really close to someone. Absolutely, you're Virgo, you're an earth sign. You kind of like are really processing things through, kind of like how does that fit into my life, kind of like a very grounded and a very pragmatical kind of like opinion and attitude. But here I see that kind of like something is possible in the back of your mind. This could also be the energy and messages that you're getting through your dreams, or you just like sit on a park bench and you see a feather falling down, like, because this is really talking about all this kind of like karma processes and something that right now you don't know. Kind of like you see one thing going on, but maybe there's like something else going on behind it, like sort of like it can be paradigm shift here as well. Maybe you want someone but you don't dare to go forward, or you're shy. Maybe you kind of like have hots for someone, somebody's out of your league, or vice versa. It does really tell me that this, again, I don't know if you're here because you really are wondering when you're going to meet your karmic, basically, or twin flame, karmic soulmate. For some of you, you definitely did. This was consummated for sure. For the others, it's really telling me that you might be a little bit too reserved, and that you really need to deal with those inner aspects of personality first. So let's see what is coming to full play this month. Wow, we have a mature man, which is good. And we have 8 of Swords reversed. Now, this is a really, really tricky card. This kind of card talks about kind of like hesitation, like again in moving forward, but for completely different reasons than the High Priestess does. She's like, High Priestess is more or less in a mode of, well, I need to study more, I need to learn more, I need to see more, right? Kind of like the person who kind of analyzes forever. Other than like, it's not analysis, it's rather kind of like intuitive, kind of like picking up the situation. With this card, really kind of like we are seeing like, I don't know, this people standing like sort of like next this pond, and then they have this like wall behind. So 8 of Swords always indicates conflict, whether this is like internal or external, where you cannot really find the resolution, because we see it here. Obviously something happened and neither of them is coming closer, and both of them kind of like have this kind of reflection of themselves, almost like justifying whatever decision they're really making, right? And this is really talking about some kind of a compromise or agreement that needs to be reached, right? But this is kind of like reversed, right? So this is really, especially with the mature man, is like calling and saying, like, looks like maybe the two of you are looking at each other from a distance, and nobody wants to make this first move. And this is like saying, okay, who is going to be the mature one over here? Who is going to overcome the conflict and blame and resistance? And how are you going to stop these problematic thoughts? It's almost like a form of a mental prison over here. So more likely, whoever takes the risk of making the first move will be met more than halfway. So it can as well be you. So maybe you kind of like either got stubborn or insecure about moving this like forward. So let me see the reasons behind what has happened. And you have Prince of Wands reversed. Now that's interesting. It is a Leo in this deck. It doesn't have to mean a Leo. So it can be a fire sign. It could be just simply kind of like some kind of like dating. And somebody maybe lost energy. I don't know, maybe some of you are simply kind of like divorcing, because judication, obviously we see a couple over here, and when somebody kind of like has a finger on their face like this, a judge over here, you really don't know what to do in this kind of like situation, right? You're kind of like overwhelmed with all this evidence, and maybe it's kind of like really hard to render a decision. And that's kind of like what basically talks about here, like as some kind of like form of an impasse right here. So this Prince of Wands here, it's basically somebody with a shield, which kind of like is talking about this protective thing. It's also somebody who kind of like wants to putting what's the song, putting on the Ritz kind of like thing, right? So it's kind of like a love of showmanship, and somebody who is maybe sacrificing the real values with the appearances. It's kind of like very important to look good and big and strong, but then you're missing all this kind of like really important things. That strength is not on the outside, the strength is on the inside. And maybe somebody just lost their strength, right? And maybe somebody was very righteousness and they lost a sense of humor. And it's kind of like looks like the friendliness and friendship and relationship is like sort of like on the ropes over here. It could be also somebody who was flighty, who kind of like has left you, and it is definitely talking about intolerance and prejudice, and somebody who really kind of like sees their own thing. So as I'm saying, like it looks like that you're almost like polarized in the situation. On one hand, I see you guys here feeling kind of like deep emotions and kind of like looking and studying the situation. On the other hand, like I mean, there's like somebody who maybe is like still very immature, kind of like who is dealing with a whole bunch of things, and maybe you're dealing also with someone who is running into a whole bunch of problems with the law, with judication, kind of like card over there. It could simply mean that also you have been dealing, being with somebody who maybe is married, who needs to divorce, and maybe lots of promises have been made, and they kind of like fail to kind of like give them and fail to render them. And this is really calling for maturity, because if people kind of like fail doing certain things, you know, who is this Maya Angelou, who said trust them when they tell you things, trust when you see the actions, because obviously they're showing you what their real intentions are. Because here you have like this dreaded 5 of Cups, and how interestingly, look, you have a mature woman. So what is the mature thing here to do? The mature thing here is to kind of like understand the entire situation. So look at this, like 5 of Cups. You know, there's like somebody who is like definitely kind of like bowing here with depression, and all these cups here are overturned, right? And this is like really telling me about memories and burden, because this is falling in your guidance, especially if you're a man or a woman here. It kind of like doesn't matter, because look at this, like 5 is 6 is 11. It's kind of like that energy that almost like psychically that's kind of like meant something to kind of like being pushed forward. It's the energy about observation that is like really prominent this particular month, right? This is kind of like telling and warning about gloomy nostalgia, kind of like that both people are not finding joy in the present, kind of a thing. Maybe one is kind of a cultivating kind of like regrets, or even maybe self recriminations, and kind of like that kind of like really only kind of like gives you this kind of like bitterness in the end, and kind of like another person doesn't really know how to handle this. So however, the past is here to teach us something, and it's kind of like to bring certain kind of like I mean, you cannot stay in the situation. Things this too shall all pass. This also can talk about the return of an old friend, guys, and like you see, like somebody has to kind of like make this like first step over here, and it's going to be a very mature thing to do. So whether or not you're going to divorce and that divorce got so hairy and messy that it's kind of like really impossible to deal with this or not, kind of there is a need. And you can hear the ice cream truck. It's like very, very warm in Toronto, almost like 90 degrees, and it's October the 10th. Lovely. So I don't know, like this is either somebody coming like from the past, or sort of like feeling strength from something from the childhood. Like you're going back to this place where it worked, where something kind of like really worked, because maybe there was like marriage of convenience, for example, and like both of you were kind of like looking for something else, sort of like, well, why didn't we fall in love? But the truth is like that somebody here is like very, very immature in this particular situation. So what is basically the karmic message? And we are having here 9 of Pentacles and the message. So karma and spirit guides are really here to send you this message. So 9 of Pentacles reverse. I really, this card and 8 of Pentacles to me really significate you guys. And this is really talking about somebody who looks like has everything. Look at this kind of like appearance of luxury. We have, you know, rings, we have bracelet, we have this like car, almost like looking at it like you're wondering, not something like just too much, it's over the top, like it's almost idyllic situation. Even the bird is here and the flower is here. It's gonna like make you scratch your head. So this is really telling me that maybe in your head, this was like reverse, guys. So in your head, you were kind of like contemplating some kind of like idea of perfection, and maybe you're forgetting what has happened. You're forgetting what you have observed, and maybe not everything that you observed is like something that you managed to digest. Certain things will be starting to kind of like appear to you, and you'll be kind of like memorizing details that will be really important to put this like whole puzzles together, right? So this is like kind of like almost like something staged, right? So you are the key basically to this particular card, the scene, right? She's like somebody who is imprisoned by her wealth, but also she kind of like has the means to kind of like be free. So almost looks to me, the message to you is like that you feel stuck in the situation, right? You are way more dynamic than you have been right now, and it's kind of like really important to kind of like go back and feel this imagination flowing. It's very important, right? And this person is really calm and collected. I really feel, Virgos, that you really don't want to be alone, that you're really missing this person. And this is also talking about remorse, and it's like really thinking about each other, really. And be very careful, because we forget when we kind of like have a passage of time all the bad things and the reasons. So unless those reasons are being brought up and discussed, like you're going to just go for a next basically circle, a next run, and you're going to end up like in the same point. So this is really telling you, do not kind of like leap into this kind of like situation. It looks like that somebody might be approaching you, but it kind of could be really bittersweet, because it could actually can predict the loss of a friendship. It can predict the loss of kind of like feeling comfort, which kind of like you guys can really thrive in a situation like this. And maybe the news you're going to get are going to sort of like disturb that equilibrium or make you long for someone. I can definitely see that you're mulling it through your head, like you have cups, you have earth, you have fire, you have swords. You're like going from one thing to another, kind of like trying to figure out how all these puzzles glue together. And I think the answer is like that in this particular period of time, what you need to work on is like sort of maturity, and sort of seeing if you maybe got really polarized and what basically need to be bridged. Of course, if somebody is like just into kind of like narcissism and self-glory and me important kind of like Tarzan pumping chest, well, that's kind of like beyond help, right? And then you have to understand, hey, what's wrong with me? I'm not supposed to date a baby, I'm supposed to date a woman or a man, right? Kind of a thing. So my dear Virgo, this was general reading, so make sure you're checking your ascendant, you're checking your moon sign, and of course to get a reading which is kind of like only targeting your energy, contact me at cattarot.ca. Thank you so much, and until the next time, you know that I love you.